All right, hello everyone. My name is Disc, and in this video we have a 19 Halls of Valor, and we are Tyrannical, Sanguine, and Explosive. Explosive is the big one of the week for us as a healer, but there are ways to make it easier, and I think the biggest way is being able to see them better. So I really like this about KUI, the color system. And I have explosive set to stark white. And since my last video, I have updated the system a little bit, replacing all of the strong gray enemies with a dark red. And that is so that the white explosives stand out more on my screen. I wanted to use gray a lot more selectively for like maybe boss ads or something like that. But I wanted to take as many whites out of the field, and that way the explosives stand out a little bit better. And also I have a weak R that will glow the explosive with an audible. So I think the best way to manage this affix is honestly with both your senses, your eyes and your ears. So that's one way to help see them. Hearing them doesn't do anything to hurt either. And then the most important part is how do we attack them. And I have 3 different ways to do it. I have my regular dot. I have a mouse over for Shadow Word Death. And then I have a second way to cast my dot, which is also a mouse over. I really think the best way to handle explosives is to have a handful of ways to cast on them, and these mouse over macros come in real handy for discipline for the same reason I recommend a click to cast system like we talked about last week. Since a large part of our healing comes through atonement, we need to make sure we always have an enemy targeted. So whenever you can, it's really helpful if you can use a mouse over to get an orb instead of switching your targets. And one thing that I have found really helpful in this whole process of making YouTube videos is watching yourself back. I feel like you can learn so much. So if that's something you've never tried, I would say try it. And I have watched this video ahead of time. And something I like to do, I think it's best to be in good practice of spotting your weaknesses. And in this run in particular, I had way too much uptime on Shadow Fiend and Schism. And those are 2 spells most of the time you just want to run on CD. So one thing I've done is I brought in this weak R that will glow them. So those are my weakest spells, so I put a glow on them. PI has a glow, obviously, and Life has a glow, obviously. This is just action bars, and those are just weak Rs that make your buttons glow. It's not 100%. I would call it like beta. You'll notice in some spots the glow drops. I'll share it if anyone's interested, but it's just not 100%, just so you know. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about are maybe just like the numbers for this run. I hadn't deleted them yet, and I know I reference them usually, but I wanted to take just like a minute to kind of pick through them a little bit one by one. So avoidable damage, I always preach. It's good to be near the bottom. I think if you're a tank, it's a different story. You can gamble your health some for the sake of the group. But then orbs, I got a lot of them, so the Druid. And here's where I start looking at like my output numbers. Healing done overall. And really all I'm looking at, because it's the strongest part of this spec, is how much did I absorb. So I look first at Divine Aegis, and right off the top of the dungeon is about 2 million damage that never even landed. And then the big one is our Rapture Shield. So for this run, it was right at 9 million, and that's 9 million taken out of key moments. So I just think that's invaluable. I think it's like one of the best utilities a group can have. And I think it's just super strong. And then the other thing I like looking at is my DPS output. And we are harsh discipline, so we're always farming those penance procs. So we want penance to be really high. Purge the Wicked is always really strong for us too. It's a whole nother subject, but maintaining your dots and farming dot activity is super important. A lot of DPS and HPS. And then Smite for now is right up here too, because we're farming those penance procs. But then I also like to pick out my Crystalline Reflection. So my overall output for shields was right under 9 million. And then for Crystalline Reflection DPS, it reflected about 1 million. So I think that's really cool, and I think that's just one of the many ways to highlight the strengths of Discipline. And this is a little bit longer of a key, but we have many really good examples here highlighting how to use Grid2 to maximize Rapture, and many other examples of the targeted spells weak aura that everyone seems to like. So let's go ahead and clip over. Alright, so here we go. Off the top, you always want to plan your innervates. Anyone in this group is as good as the next, so you just want to roll PI on CD and just try and pair it up with others. And this is a special group because we have a Boomkin. I, ahead of time, passed him a weak aura that will glow my unit frame when I Rapture, and that's his innervate Q. Rapture is the only time we drop mana. If he can cancel even some of them out, game changer, and he does. So Fortified Trash. And these pulls, the single caster is the big meanie. So I have him highlighted in the darker color, low lighted in the darker color. And you just want to kill him before you chain. Drop my first PI. And also first pull the dungeon, gotta roll Shadow Fiend. I mean, you'll see the explosives start to pop up. They are white, full opacity, really easy to see, and they have a little glow on them, and an audible. So I just think that's the best way to do it. And we have one more caster. He is a dark red. Dragon's also dark red. I just want to focus him first. He is our Schism. Yeah, I'm not schisming. So I think here I just totally forgot, but I noticed in other places I started the cast and accidentally canceled it. So yeah, Schism's on my list to get better at. And you'll also see that weak aura is not glowing Schism right now. So it like works sometimes and doesn't others. Like when I needed it. Okay, caster down. Kiting is fine.
5, 4,
Schism down on the dragon. So Tyrannical boss, pretty much only tracking one item with bigwigs, and that's his Horn of Valor, I think it's called. First one, get right into a Rapture. And I adjusted the values a little bit for a darker blue value on my absorbs, on my bars. And that was a really nice innervate. And this is mainly wasted mana on that Rapture. After the Horn, no one should be taking damage, but if they accidentally did, a big shield would potentially save their life. So I opted just to dump some more shields. And we have PI. I'm just waiting for a partner. Things got a little bit tricky there. But I had a perfect play. It might have happened a little quick to see it, but a really pro defensive move for a Disc Priest is Flash Heal followed by a shield on yourself. You get 10% reduction in damage from a Flash Heal, and then the shield mitigates quite a bit as well. You'll notice my bars too, I brought that in. There's a little yellow icon on my name. That's my 10% reduction from Flash Heal. And here comes our next Horn. I lay a barrier. Grip 10 men to help. And our Druid is an Incarn, so there is our PI. And for an attack like that Horn of Valor, where it's just upfront damage, I would say the best way to lay barrier is with about 3 to 4 seconds leeway. And that's just to give your allies a moment to get in it. And Rapture is available for a second horn. Here goes our Rapture, starting with the tank. That dark blue value on my bars is the Absorb. And that was great. And with Rapture, it's always a good idea to start with the tank, because it allows you to Rapture the tank, the party, and then the tank again. And you just get a little bit more value out of it. Sometimes I even go tank, party, tank, party, tank, party. It really just depends. And not always is using every global of a Rapture maximizing it either. And I think we have an example. Defensive Penance, just because he was missing quite a bit of health. And here there's a really big group heal, which I've brought up as a red cast bar. I think you'll see it in a second. Holy Radiance it's called. And that is my Fear Bomb. So pretty much every dungeon has a few key places where a Fear Bomb is best. It will not interrupt every cast, but in this pull, interrupting that Holy Radiance is the best thing you can do to help. And in this pull, you'll notice the Shield Maiden is a gray color. And this is one place where I want an enemy to stand out as a different color because he cleaves. So that's just my system for keeping an eye on cleave people and making sure I'm not near them. So white equals cleave. That mortal Hugh. Some people think their name's Huey. They just get hit by all of them. So scanning buffs, we have PI. Okay, so we went a single pull, which is fine. But this guy is structurally just a time sink. So it doesn't matter that he's not difficult. The Druid's Incarn is just coming available, and I have PI. I would say he should have popped it instantly, and I PI him. And what I'm getting at is if someone like counts it out, from when our spells came available till his death is more than 20 seconds. 4, 3, 2, I think as long as a PI is full value, it's fair play. And that was an ouch. I think gripping is really nice to cancel out thundering, but it also can mess you up, so just, you have to be careful on that one. So we have quite a bit of spells active. Opening with my dots, spreading a dot with Penance, PI the Incarn. I think I favor the Druid because he's just actually giving me really sick innervates. But yep, definitely want to get the Shadow Fiend rolling with that Schism. And as far as a sequence, you always want to cast Shadow Fiend first. You don't want to waste a global of within Schism. So Shadow Fiend, then Schism, then Pump. Okay, we got another Shield Maiden in white. Gotta stay away from him. There's a Holy Radiance. And our Paladin here is really on it with his job roll. And I really don't need to kick anything, but it is just good practice to use Fear Bomb as a utility spell. You'll also see a red dotted line on our tank. That's just marking the dent armor. It's kind of just an indicator for me to heal extra, i.e. renew. And we'll see right here the blue dotted line followed by the solid border for the dispel. We have seen that earlier in the dungeon, and it's similar to my system for the targeted spells, but that one is actually just aura based. And there we saw the etched, which is actually the targeted spells weak aura. Oh, and I thought the mage was going to move, but I should have known better. Thankfully we had Mass Dispel in the book. Mind Soothe for a little more real estate. And notice the nameplate color in this system. What does that mean? Cleave, 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 cleave. A lot of cleave. So I'm opening with my dots. We have some spells to dump. Fat PI on the Hunter. Schism and Star. Pushing for Mind Games followed by a Penance. And for every Schism you want to try and get 2 Penance procs. Paints up. And right there was my Fear Bomb. You might have to replay to see what exactly happened, but I got in the way of the kiting direction. The mobs were right on top of me, and I heard the sound of their Mortal Hue cast. I wasn't really scared at all because I had Fear Bomb, and that's all you need to interrupt and get out of the way. Alright, and here we have a really nice targeted spells weak aura right there on the Druid. So it is visible. See, I dropped my shield on the Druid, so I had to go LOS. Some people would say LOS, LOSing the mechanic increases damage, but I think just eating it with a Discipline Priest is best. Okay, so tank is down. That was really hard to see, but we're just buying a little time. I dropped a Fear Bomb. We had a quick res, and we're back. But in a case like that, we had a battle res. We vamped just for a second, playing with line of sight, and we have a full recovery. And that Hunter should not have been standing up on that perch. He should have known better that I was going to grip him. I just can't help it in a case like that. I do think I'm a genuine troll. I just had to grip him. So in a case like this, you always want to go left. And here is where we're going to highlight Grid 2, maximizing our absorbs with Rapture. And don't pay any mind to my Shadow Fiend being up for like 10 minutes by now. I dropped PI because I want it for the HPS. Penance into a Rapture. And in these storm attacks, the tank is really in no danger at all. So I'm just focusing every global of Rapture on myself and the DPS. And I do like to return to myself more often just to make sure I am alive. But the tank is bottom of the priority in these attacks. And arguably my Shadow Fiend needed to be played in the pull before these guys. At least I should have played him on that first mini boss, but like here I am holding again. That's really bad. And for this guy, this is just a cooldown reset. Do not pop anything here except roll Schism on cooldown. Penance procs, Mind Games. And there is a targeted spell there that's usually kicked. But if you want to be real pro about it, you can watch the cast bar. And if it looks like it's going to get off, you can shield the target. Doesn't happen often though. Shouldn't happen often. And going into the boss, it is the same idea. We want the first round to be with Rapture. We're going to have PI rolling. We start with a Penance for the Wheel and Woe. And Rapture yourself and the DPS first. And pretty much don't even Rapture the tank. He's not going to need it. Alright, so here we go. Tyrannical boss. There's our Lust. As an opener, I just want to make sure I have a Penance proc farmed. Here comes the Storm. I drop the Penance proc into a Rapture on myself. There's our PI just in time, and this one hurts more, so I wall, rapturing the party first, tank last in priority. Until the phase ends, I give the tank my last rapture shield, anticipating that tank buster, the Shield of Light, and that is an attack that interacts with my targeted spell's weak aura. You can get ahead of it, and it's best to get ahead of it with a shield if you can. It'll really help reduce the sting of that attack. And here we are in the second phase. Just want to roll Schism and pump as much DPS as possible. And coming up, I about die 3 times in a row, so just pretend like nothing happens. But going into this next phase, we have to dump both of our remaining cooldowns, starting with Shadow Fiend, then Barrier. As an opener, I Radiance, followed by Schism, and we are only 2 smites off of a Penance proc, followed by a Mind Games, and just a couple of Binding Heals to top the group, and a shield on the tank, anticipating that Shield of Light. But I think he had something too. In cases like that, it's always a good idea to cast a flash heal somewhere, and that's to load your 10% reduction. And here we are again, back in the boring phase. I think this is where I also dropped a Schism, where I thought I cast it and I didn't, because it's not glowing. And for that tank buster, there's no need to hold Pince Up, so I gave him it there to mitigate that slam. And it's one of those things where you have to kind of just know the mechanics and know that that tank slam is coming. But to get ahead of it, I think, is the best play for Discipline, and it's the best play for Shield. And I think it's actually really fun in practice. So I think that's just the best way to do it. And the that weak aura for the targeted casts just makes it super duper easy. And here we go with this trash pull. We have 1 cleave target, and we have 1 caster in the dark nameplate. There's our PI on the hunter. And you'll also see that blue dotted line here for the dispel. It's a dotted line for the cast, solid line for the dispel. That is just aura related, but on the same type system. And no major spells here, but we have mana. Opening with all my dots. And there was an etch that went out. Arguably that wasn't a good fear. I think the enemies might have gotten a tick of healing from Sanguine, but I was marked with the etch. It put me in a really vulnerable position, so I fear bombed to cancel the cast. And in a pull like this, you just want to keep all your dots active, and it's not a bad idea to target the healthiest mob for your Schism. Just make sure you get full value. We see the etch going out with the targeted spell's weak aura. That's something you can either try and get ahead of or not, but it's nice to see where it's going. And in a case like right here, we have 1 mob that's about to die, and a healthy mob with no dot. So I like to switch over to the one that's about to die, penance him, and it kind of preserves the dot by sending it over to the more healthy mob. And here we have Dragon. That is a perfect place for Shadow Fiend. Dot, Shadow Fiend, Schism. Hunter kind of had it coming that time. Although that time I think was a little bit less troll. He was targeted with a mechanic, so I think gripping him down might have been the best play. So Shadow Fiend's out, just pumping. And here comes the Wolf Boss. We are Tyrannical, so it's really important we play it correctly. But our spellbook is perfect. So as an opener, we have a little bit of time until we need to stack. I really just want to farm a penance proc. So starting with smites, queuing the PI, dropped a penance, a regular shield to mitigate that jump, and I go in and drop my long cooldown, the barrier, and top it off with a Radiance Schism Mind Games penance proc. I gave a single Wheel and Woe to myself. Never a bad idea to play a little extra defensive with that selective shield. But for that Claw Frenzy, we all had full health, which is in a sense a defensive. So I just Radianced and Atoned. And then going into that leap was my first Rapture. Everyone was shielded for that Claw Frenzy. And you always want to prioritize those with the bleeds. And for that Claw Frenzy, I reached for Wall, which is all we needed. But Pain Sup was available and a viable option as a personal. So we're in a good place. Spells are midway cooling down. We just have a couple of dogs. With these guys, it's what I would call a spiky type pull. It's never a bad idea to drop a shield on yourself. Yep, right there. So even if I have extra, let's say Wheel and Woe procs, I'm dropping that shield on myself just to act as a personal. So getting all my dots out, making sure penance is rolling, keeping dots active. Divine Star, AoE, and had a really big penance proc, dropping that shield on myself. And it looks like ultimately that whole shield was wasted. Yeah, you can't predict who they're going to jump on. And at this point, we're opting to get a couple more dogs because we're just waiting on the lust timer. Not dropping any cooldowns. We're banking for boss at this point. All my dots are out. Schism and Star. Mind Games. And the tank got a little bit low there, but I wasn't too worried about him. And that's my favorite sequence. You'll see it over and over. Is a flash shield followed by a shield. Gives you 10% reduction and whatever the size of your shield is. And that shield didn't look like it was fully wasted. I think I stood in a little bit of Sanguine. Helped out. So this boss, I will tell you, it's not too exciting. Even though we are Tyrannical, we had a really good hand at the cards. And it just wasn't hard at all. Also, oh yeah, it looks like we're going for more dogs. Yeah, 2 minutes on cooldown for Lust. So getting a couple more dogs, banking all of our CDs. And that was where I made somewhat of an error. I walled. And this is where we had a small oopsie doopsie, but we pulled a deer. And they are really dangerous because they have a cast charge. And that charge will one-shot anyone. So I'm immediately focusing him, watching for his charge cast, and I was ready to fear bomb. Okay, now we have boss. 30 seconds till Lust. I think we should go for it. Mana's full. Innervate's at the ready. PI's ready. Give it to the Boomy to simp. And I bring that red cast bar center screen because that's something that can interrupt me. And when those ads come out, that's a perfect time to spread a dot with penance. And this was another fairly large mistake. Didn't hurt us in the end, but I dropped Rapture when I didn't need to. And everyone has full shields, and there's absolutely no damage going out because the Hunter canceled out that first bleed mechanic. But we are full health, which is in a sense a defensive. Always want to spread out and then kind of come back in. And for this one, I dropped a barrier, grip the Druid in, and it was a good thing because the Mage missed the stack. And that's fun. So I have the targeted spell twice. And for this, I have no cooldowns to offer, but I wall for myself. Paints up the tank for fun. And yeah, it wasn't even needed. So in a place like that where I did not have barrier and I did not have rapture, you can at least protect 2 people by your personal wall and giving someone an external paints up. And honestly, I think I could have held, but we don't need them coming up. So this is a priest trick. You can fade and pretty much nothing will ever aggro you. And I have that as a fade mount macro. Get the most value out of it. And Boomkin was asking if I could soothe. For the record, soothe works on humanoids and dragons, not beasts. So we did get lucky. We didn't need those guys that pulled, but they ended up resetting. So that's really cool. Yeah, it joined us for a second, but then reset. Also that stomp, a fear bomb, can interrupt it. And here's just a cooldown dump, because this is a time sink. Shadow Fiend, Schism. There is our True Shot and PI. So again, these guys are not hard. Yes, we do have a boss coming up, but the name of the game is getting as many rounds of cooldowns as possible. This is definitely more than a 20-second fight. PI is totally suitable for this. But it actually looks like I should have given it to the Mage. I don't think I gave it to the Mage much, and I think in hindsight I should have. That's okay. And our tank went to get some beer. So here's, I always preach using every spell in your book. Laying out a little cookie trail for him, just to help speed things up that much. And this is a cool bridge. Yeah, I think this is a cool bridge. I never played Halls of Valor before. I think I took that expansion off. There was a stint of time I didn't play WoW, but I started in vanilla, if anyone's wondering. And then I took a couple of expansions off while I was touring with Disney on Ice. And then, yeah, after a pretty bad neck injury I had during COVID, I kind of got back to WoW. Alright, and now we have the Kings. The 2 guys on the left are not quite as fun, but you just want to pump as much as possible here. Keeping a Renew on the tank and Atonement Healing is all he needs. So just Schism, Mind Games, pump Smites for penance. And there is also a Bleed on the tank marked by that red dot. And PI is about to come available. I'm watching for the Hunter. There he is. And that's just OmniCD next to my bars on the left. But I have a weak R that makes a sound too. So I kind of use that as my system. And one of those got off, which is scary. But now we have the fun side. And we have a really cool opportunity to maximize on our Wheel and Woe shields. These guys will send a dagger targeted at a single player. And it leaves behind a healing reduction debuff. So the best thing you can do is get ahead of it. But it's really quick. So you have to be ready to cast it, making sure your shield's available, and paying really close attention. But for that first round, I just opted to Rapture. It was mainly a waste, but it covered the first dagger. and watching for that white dotted line in party for the targeted spells weak aura. Let's see, where's one? On the hunter, and shielded it. So if you saw that, it's super duper quick, but getting ahead of it is the best thing to do, and I think that's really fun in practice, really pro, especially because of that debuff. And yeah, that one I missed. I tried holding my Wheel and Woe by casting my other spells, but I ran out of spells to cast, and I just dumped a shield on myself, guessing, and it hit the Druid. But that's okay. There's a dagger. Got it. PI just came available. That's great. Uh-oh, missed that dagger. So missing a dagger is not going to kill someone, usually, but I just think it's like the sport of getting ahead of something with the shield is really maximizing our toolkit the best. And you'll saw when I missed the dagger on the hunter there at the end, it stung quite a bit more. So I just think absorbs are the biggest utility a group can have, and that's the hill I'll die on. So first boss, not too much to it. We have quite a bit of time. We just have to play this right. And we do have a targeted spell on this first boss, which you want to use shields for. And at the top, I'm anticipating some AoE damage. So I got a penance proc, and I'm kind of banking it for just a second. Yep, dropped a Wheel and Woe on myself for that targeted spell. PI is on our Druid. And the line goes from dotted to solid. That is not marking a dispel. I'm sure you guys know that in this fight. A solid line here is just marking the debuff. So the dotted line is your shield indicator. Solid is the heal. And we also have adds here. That's a perfect time to cast Penance and Star. And got ahead of that Fell Rush with a Rapture. And this is an example where we don't need to hold Rapture, but we also don't need every GCD of it. And that Fell Rush, I actually missed the front end on the Mage, but I was in Rapture and took care of some of the dot. Oh, he's just getting picked on. And he has a dot on him. Perfect time for a Wheel and Woe drop. God, he's lucky. Holy Word Life saved him there, plus my shields. And there's a targeted spell on our Hunter. Got ahead of it. Schism, Penance proc. Wheel and Woe shield. Mitigates that dot perfectly. Penance for the adds. And for that attack, I use Wall plus a Wheel and Woe shield on myself. I try and bank them again by casting other spells. Sometimes it works in your favor, sometimes it doesn't. And this was for IO, so I really wasn't playing around. I had the dot and a Penance proc, so I flooded a defensive Penance into myself and then capped myself with the Wheel and Woe. And it was a good thing because I was targeted twice in a row. Barely even touched me. Alright, one boss to go. We have a full 5 minutes. Pretty much with bigwigs on this fight, the only thing we're worried about is the runic brand. And that's where we want to time our Rapture. So the first one is Rapture, and the second one is Shadow Fiend. And that's kind of just the best way to do it. Fap, fap, fap. But props to this Druid and our tank, but the Druid is giving me the sickest innervates, making my Raptures just totally free. Beautiful synergy. And he's playing orbs and punting. So it looks like our Hunter queued up. Yep, at the top I was anticipating that AoE damage, so I banked a Penance proc. And that's where I started my Schism. It's always good to use movement utility to run out. That is a pretty big mechanic, and there's not much time to react. So here comes our Runic Brand. Open with a Radiance for the Mastery. Straight into Rapture, trying to position somewhat in the center, getting as much value out of this Rapture as I can while people are in range, and that was perfect. There is our PI on our Druid, and in this phase there is a lot of AoE damage, but our Atonement healing is more than enough to cover. So I'm trying to just keep some Renews out,
5, 4,
keeping Atonement heals flooding.
2.
I got scared there. And it's really nice to use Penance on yourself there. It gives you a 25% movement speed boost. And here comes the second Runic Brand, which is where we have lined up our Shadow Fiend. But you'll notice I miss him. And in this phase, I Pain Sup and Wall. I would have really liked to have another Rapture, but we don't. No externals, but we do have personals. And this is where I cast my Shadow Fiend super late, I think. Yep, there he goes. So better timing would be during the second Runic Brand, but it was a miss. And as a result, a lot of my Shadow Fiend went to waste. But overall, this was a really good key. I'm just making notes to work more on my Shadow Fiend and Schism. And to aid myself, I brought in that weak R that glows those two buttons. And I hope I can work out the kinks with it soon. I would like to share it. It's one of those that's also not mine, but I did help someone in like the testing phases to produce it. Yep, this key was with Yasmin again. I think it's really cool that we play well together. And I hope to get some more keys in this week. We weren't even expecting to time this one. We were kind of just getting warmed up for the cycle. And we actually were both like pleasantly surprised that we got through it with ease. And after playing with this Boomkin, I asked him if he wanted to join the team. To have some of the helps with orbs, someone that can simp for me with Innervate, and someone that can punt is going to be a good ally this week. So I think everything's about playing to your strengths. And I hope there are a couple ways in this video where you can see how I look at min-maxing Disc Priest. And until next time, guys, Disc out.